an amazing organization that gives grants to families for a wide variety of things, and you have different programs. Somebody said to me the other day, now I thought they only supported the military.
No.
And I said, no, they have a great program for military
that's just
families,
one
but that's
program.
just one program.
Right.
They have a safety program. They have all kinds of different programs.
Assisted communication,
Yeah.
assistance dogs, tuition,
But the
summer
truth
camp.
is that, a family, if it's something that has to do with the treatment of autism, they can ask for whatever they want.
Right.
That I love, that there are some organizations that just give iPads, and heaven knows that's a wonderful
Right,
thing and that's
right.
fabulous, but not everybody needs an
Right,
iPad.
right.
Sometimes somebody needs locks for the door.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes somebody needs a trampoline. And,
Right. And we give some of those more practical things.
Yeah. But it has to be, you have to apply for a grant.
Yes.
And you have 4 times during the year, and today is a very fortuitous day for us to talk about it, because if you wanted to apply for a grant today, you could, but that will not be true on Friday.
That's right.
Friday, the grants are closed because it's February 1st, and then you can't apply again until, April?
April, right.
So, if you are in need right now, and by the way, you can apply for a grant for ABA copays.
Yes, you can.
There are a wide variety of different things you can apply for. You can do that. Nancy's organization has given away, last count, I know you've given away 1.5, I'm sure it's more than that now, million.
1.85 million.
There we go. So you're almost at the 2 million mark.
Yeah.
We have to have some sort of a celebration
Yeah,
when
definitely.
you meet the 2 million mark, because that's a lot of help for a lot of families.
Yeah.
So there's that, and both Nancy and I are very proud autism parents
Right.
as well. So
Right.
that's I always used to say it's just a couple of autism moms sitting around talking.
That's
is
right.
what
That's
this
what we're
show is.
talking
So
about.
Anyway, and we like to cover in the news.
Yes.
Just to talk about what's new and happening that might be of interest to you. So many of you watch The Good Doctor. Last year we had Kobe Bird on the show because he broke through a glass ceiling of sorts, and in that he was an individual on the autism spectrum playing an individual on the autism
Right.
spectrum on primetime television. And that, to our knowledge, had not happened before, and he was 15 years old, and it was just, and Kobe is luscious beyond luscious. So The Good Doctor, this Monday, 2 nights ago, had another episode, which we've known about for a while, and we're keeping it under our hats. But there was a love story on the episode. You know that Sean, the doctor on the show, has feelings for this woman that's in his life.
And she's his roommate, right?
Right, and he's trying to figure it out and sort it all out, because love is difficult for everybody,
It is.
right? But, he doesn't really have a whole lot to judge by. So I
Right.
thought this was very clever writing, that they had a young woman come into the hospital who's on the autism spectrum. And you need to watch this. I'm not going to give the whole thing away for you. You need to watch this. But her roommate is there with her.
Yeah, who happens to be played by
The fabulous
friend of the show, Alex Plank.
Yes, and Alex has been a semi-regular here on the show, and this was a big excitement for him when he booked this and when he went up to Vancouver and filmed it, and because he's done some acting work before. He's the one who invented WrongPlanet.net,
Right.
the website, when he was 17, and we adore Alex. I think of Alex as being like, the younger brother that I do have a younger brother, but he's like another younger brother in my life. And he and I have a relationship like a younger brother and an older sister. He loves to bait me and say something, and then I'll be like, what? And he'll go, I'm just kidding. It's that kind of a relationship. We love Alex. But Alex plays this role beautifully. I think what is so exciting for, I think, the autism community, and maybe the rest of the community doesn't know, is that this character is very dissimilar to Alex. He's doing an acting job. He's just bringing a wealth of knowledge about autism to it so that it's very
Right,
sensitive,
right.
but it's not the kind of autism that Alex himself has. So that was sort of thrilling for me to see Alex act. Was really lovely. And the girl who plays the girl, his roommate, was truly delicious in the role. And there's a beautiful, beautiful moment you must see. It just was really lovely.
And it's really all about how those on the spectrum experience sex and romance differently.
Well, it is about that, but it was very interesting because another character, a doctor, is trying to like constantly define things for other people. I guess she's a control freak. And she was like, well, it's this or it's that. And you see Sean watching her try to define stuff. And then there's another doctor who's a foil to her who's like, no, it doesn't, it's not that way because you say it is. Like, let people have their feelings. At one point when they say there's a girl here and she's on the autism spectrum and she turns to look at Sean like, you know, what do you have to say about that? And the other doctor looks at her like, what is your problem? And she's like, well, and she goes, well, they don't all know each other. Like, what? Okay, so she's on the autism
Right,
spectrum. What
doesn't
do you
mean
want
she's
Sean to
automatically
do?
gonna
Like, they're not related.
Jump up and down and
Right, like
say,
what's
"You're
he
on the
yeah.
autism
So
spectrum."
there's humor and, you know, the Good Doctor is so great at all of this. But we want to encourage people, go and watch the episode. It's available on demand right now. And watch it. I'm sure it's on Hulu and all those other things as well. Support Alex, and I don't know the name of the young girl. She's a very good actress too.
Fiona Gubelman.
Fiona Guggelman. Okay, and so, you know, spread some love on them and let them know that you enjoyed it, and let the people at the Good
Oh,
Doctor
actually, I
know
think
that-
Vera Blonstein played the other
Okay,
role.
I was going to say I don't know what her name is.
Yeah.
I've not met her before, and now I know in talking to Alex that, you know, she was just delightful to work with. That they had a really good time and became good friends in the taping of this. So we're thrilled for Alex. We're thrilled for the Good Doctor. But honestly, you know, it is the top rated show
Yes.
on television right now. But don't take that for granted. Don't just assume that everybody knows and that we're all loving it. Let ABC know that this is important to you and that you're watching and that you're loving it, because that means that not only will this show persist longer, but that other shows will be in the making, and we've seen that come to fruition.
Right.
So, okay, now that was our good news that we let off with. So let's turn to some, you know, the ick, and then we'll get back to something interesting. I'm sick to death of hearing of teachers and aides that don't know what to do when someone is misbehaving in their classroom, or when someone is not even misbehaving, behaving differently.
Yeah.
And it's appalling to me, but we need to keep talking about it, because I need to at least say to parents, do everything that you can, which means getting a behavior intervention plan attached to your IEP. So having said that, we're going to wade into this story that happened in Okaloosa County, Florida. A Florida teacher and 2 aides are currently being accused of abusing 3 different children with autism by shutting them inside a dark bathroom and blowing a whistle in one's ear.
One who is particularly susceptible to sensory issues.
The alleged incidents took place between September 1st and November 14th of last year, and all 3 suspects, the teacher and the 2 aides, have been charged with aggravated child abuse. The investigators say that on different occasions, the teacher and the aides intentionally and maliciously blew the whistle into the child with low sensory auditory threshold, who typically wears earphones to reduce noise, and that they put children in a dark bathroom.
One was left inside for an hour and a half.
And that the children would be screaming and crying while they were in these bathrooms.
Clearly just abuse all the way around.
Yeah.
There's no other way you can look at it.
I know that people will say, well, these people didn't know what else to do. And look, I get that. But, you know, I don't know about you, but I've been in plenty of situations where I didn't know what else to do. And I was saying earlier about how, you know, sometimes you don't win the Parent of the Year award because you try and say something or do something with your child. Afterwards you go, well, that was not. But to leave somebody in a bathroom for an hour and a half, we transcend all of that. That's just cruelty.
And to blow a whistle in a kid's ear with auditory processing difficulties is just downright cruel.
I really hope they throw the book at these people and lock them up, because the message needs to be sent that you're held accountable for things that you do in the classroom. And it's not just for the teacher and the aides that I want to be held accountable. I want for whoever was overseeing those people to be held accountable.
For the lack of training.
For the lack of training, for the lack of oversight, because you should know what's happening in these classrooms. And if you don't, it's on you. I mean, there's no way if a child is screaming, somebody else heard that. Classrooms are not so separated from each other. Somebody should have blown the whistle and said, I'm seeing this, I'm aware of this, this isn't right.
Right.
And I know that teachers hang together and aides are afraid to report on a teacher, but we're talking about children here. You've got to speak up. So, and eventually somebody did. A witness reported them, but we're talking about things that happened from September 1st to November 14th. Speak up, people. Speak up. Absolutely horrible. We're going to follow this case. They've been charged with aggravated child abuse, and I hope that they do jail time. And I hope that every single aide and teacher who has kids in the classroom recognizes that, these are crimes. This is a crime. Don't commit a crime, and this won't happen to you. And if you need training, speak up. We're offering free training here. So speak up. You need to know something, write in and ask us a question. I'll be happy to get it answered by an expert. Okay.
Now we have a rather scientific story.
I thought this was cool and fun.
But I didn't understand what the chick-inspired autism test meant.
So there's this dude, Giorgio Valotaraggio. I don't know, I just slaughtered his name, right? But he was developing software, and he was interested in looking at responses of different kinds of animals.
Right.
And what he noted is that chicks are able to, they have, I don't know if we have a picture, when you grabbed a picture for this, Traven, I don't know if you grabbed that picture, but there are two things that look sort of like a head. I'll hold it up here so you guys, I don't think you're going to be able to see. But it looks sort of like a head, and in one of them it has three dots that are in a line, and in the other one it has three dots that are aligned in a way that it suggests a human face. Very, it's sort of like when you look at a picture of a car and it's got the headlights and it's got the grill and you go, oh, that looks like a human face, right? So he put these things down to see if chicks would be drawn more to the human face than the non-human face, and found that they were. And so this started a whole way of thinking of, wait a second, why do some animals and some people notice the face, and that if they do notice the face, that is the typical development, right? But if somebody doesn't notice the face, then that suggests that there are other things happening. And this has led to looking at, maybe we can take babies
and have them look at these diagrams
and see if they are drawn to the human face, because if they aren't, and we know that kids with autism, especially ones that have, it's not dysgraphia, but there's another name for when you can't recognize faces, that if they aren't drawn to that, then we would start early intervention at maybe 5 months to ensure that that child doesn't get behind.
Right.
How exciting would that be?
That would be very exciting.
And, all kinds of research have been done about face recognition on the autism spectrum, and it's all sort of fascinating to me. With neurotypical people and with people on the spectrum, they took a bunch of sports pictures and they blanked out the face. And they showed a picture of, like, Serena Williams, lunging to get a ball playing tennis, and they blacked out the face, just fuzzed it, right? And said, what do you think she's feeling right now? And it was so interesting that for neurotypical people, when we don't have the face, we don't know. We're like, I can't even, like, we get shut down.
Right.
But people on the autism spectrum, with or without the face, they said the same thing. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That you and I take in facial expression and assign more value to that than the whole body.
Right.
But people on the autism spectrum completely just leave that out, and sometimes will take in the whole body, but not be focused on the face. I just find that fascinating. We're finding more and more of these things, and when we find how the brain works differently, it's it leads to knowledge of what to do to help people to overcome where the obstacles are.
Right.
But it's also helpful the other way for you and I to learn, because you know that there are people on the autism spectrum that can do things a lot better than you and I can do, and that maybe sometimes looking at the whole body and not focusing on the face is the thing to do, right? Anyway, it's just fascinating to me. I kind of
So,
like it.
yeah,
I agree on it.
it's, they developed a simple test that could screen these babies, so.
Yeah, well, and so you can read more about this. I don't remember where we got the article from. Horizon.
The EU Research and Innovation magazine.
There we go. Fabulous. Thank you. So you guys can, if you, this sort of thing flips your switch,
Yeah.
definitely check it out and read more about it. I'm fascinated by all the ways they're using zebrafish, because they're finding that zebrafish are very similar to individuals on the spectrum,
Which is interesting.
isn't it? I don't know
in and of
how you figure
itself.
that out.
I don't either.
But anyway, so, excuse me, now I've got the hiccups. We have Vince Redmond.
Right.
Who's going to be joining us in just a few minutes to talk about depression. Because
The time of year.
it is, and it's also pervasive in our community. Let's face it, there's a lot that could, if you, don't do something about it, lead you down a path of depression and keep you there. And we've all been there, right? I don't think there's a person who is anywhere in the autism community that hasn't felt some level of depression at some time. So I'm glad we're going to be talking about this with a professional. And there's nobody better than Vince, because he's been a therapist and now he's a licensed marriage and family therapist. So we're going to take a break and we're going to get Vince on Skype to join us, and we'll be back. Stick with us. We've got joining us right now, and we don't want to make him wait, Vince Redmond. He's one of our favorite people on the planet. Vince is a wealth of knowledge because he was a behavioral therapist for many years, and then became a licensed marriage and family therapist. So he's such a gift to all of us because he gets both sides of it. I always tell the story about how I went to a therapist at some point, and she said, well, after hearing about everything, I can tell you there's one thing you should get rid of because it's so stressful. It's that ABA therapy. That's what's stressing you out. You should get rid of that. And that was the end of that, right? So it's just a treat to have somebody who gets it from both sides. So Vince, you are the Director of Family Services at CARD. You're just, everything about you is wonderful. So thank you for joining us again.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and we asked you to come today to talk with us about the big D, depression. And what a happy topic, right?
All right.
But a relevant topic, right?
Right.
This time we're coming off the holidays, New Year, it's cold outside. It actually is something that we want to talk about. It's not something to be shameful of. It's not something to keep quiet about. We actually want to talk about it, because the first step in making it better, the first step in getting more support, the first step in feeling better is actually bringing it up. And so I think this is a perfect time for this topic.
Absolutely.
Are you finding more parents with depression this time of year?
We do. Yeah, I actually do. Both at CARD and in my private practice, you find this time of year to have more depression going through for multiple reasons. Obviously, family dynamics and things that are going on. But this time of the year, in the winter and the cold and the celebrations of the holidays concluding, and everyone going back to kind of their regular lives or their regular schedules, oftentimes can bring forth some depression or depressive feelings. It might not actually be a complete depressive episode, but having depressed feelings for multiple reasons. But yeah, I would say this time of year it's more prevalent.
I also find that this time of the year, change is hard for me.
Yeah, me too.
I struggle with change, and this time of year, I feel like even if I try really hard to make as little change as possible, it seems like the world has decided to make January that we're going to make it all tipsy-turvy. Your insurance changes. Like even if you kept the same insurance, what they cover and how they cover, and it's a new year and you've got new co-pays again. I mean,
Your ABA schedule changes.
like there's just so many things that change this time
Schools
of year,
change.
and I always talk about the bug on the lawnmower syndrome, that sometimes I feel like I'm a bug riding on the lawnmower and everything's just hitting me
Right.
so fast that I'd rather go back to the holidays where it's hectic but it's nice, because this is all stuff. But, so there's that on top of it in January. Then,
Yeah.
and then I just teased and said it's tax time.
Right.
Because we're all getting those forms, and now we have to take care of that too. That just makes me want to run into
I
the
know,
ocean.
and put my head in the
It
sand.
makes us all want to run and
Yeah,
hide.
exactly.
Run and hide, exactly. But I know I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, just the people writing into the show and calling in the office, that everybody's feeling it right now, and it isn't just the anxiety and the stress. Everybody's feeling a little bit of the depression. So and their kids are too. And I just thought this is a great topic. You and I talked about it and said this is the thing to talk about. So Vince, we've identified that pretty much everybody's feeling it at some point. And is there still a stigma? Are people still feeling like they can't own up to it if that's what they're feeling? Do you see that in life, Vince?
I do, and that's why I had said that in the beginning, because I think there still is a lot of stigma out there about reaching out for help in general, either it be from depression or anxiety, or sometimes it's just confusion about things, right? Especially in our world of Baby A, there's so much out there, so many things going on, so many different treatments and opinions and behavior plans and so forth, that it can be very overwhelming. And you see that there's still, it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Let me preface that. But there still is the stigma that people are embarrassed to reach out for help. They're more reserved to ask for help. They don't want to reach out because they might feel that that's a judgment on them and their inabilities to either handle the stress or handle their situations. Or even just managing their emotions. So that first step is really just not being shy about asking for help.
And who can they ask for help from? What would be the first line of defense there?
Well, again, depending on their situation, the first thing I would, if they're in an ABA agency, the first thing is to reach out to your supervisor. Reach out to your clinical care supervisor, the one who's in charge of your program, and let them know what's going on. Sometimes just a nice rapport, nice dialogue with them could help alleviate some of the emotions. However, if it's more serious than that, then they can get you in contact with maybe more services within their organization, or they can give you contacts to resources outside the organization that can help, provide some professional counseling for you.
There you go. I was just thinking about it when you were saying it. We talked last night about the fact that neither one of us are shy talking about our own circumstances, and I certainly have suffered from chronic depression in my life, and sometimes it's more manageable than other times, right? But for me, I don't think it's that I feel embarrassed or ashamed to say and ask for help when I'm feeling it. It's more that when I get low, it doesn't occur to me that something else could help and that talking to someone could help. And do you find that, Vince, that people just, because when I'm low, I just feel like, well, what could anybody do?
Right.
I just feel low. But it can help tremendously.
Sure.
To
And
talk
that's
to
where
somebody.
that hopelessness comes in, and that those depressive thoughts that come into our minds that nobody understands me or no one will be able to help me if I can't help myself. There's no help out there. There's a lot of those depressive thoughts or automatic thoughts that come into our minds when we're that low, right? When our emotions and our abilities feel so depressed that we start to believe that there is no help out there, or that help that is out there isn't right for you or isn't going to be effective for you. However, it absolutely is, right? Everyone can benefit from counseling if they're feeling depressed or anxious or overwhelmed.
And Nancy, what about you?
Well, I've suffered from depression on and off my whole life. And you're right that sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you tend to pull inward and you feel like that's the time you can't reach out.
Yeah.
But in order to be there for our kids, we really have to take our oxygen first, so to speak.
Amen to that, sister.
Yeah. And it can have an effect on your child's development and how well they're doing.
Yeah.
They pick up on these things, right, Vince?
Well, and that's a great point, Nancy. I think it also travels through the entire family, right? I think sometimes we believe that our children aren't aware of our emotions, or they're not aware of how we're feeling, and that we put on a good enough mask or a good enough disguise to be able to shield them from that. But that's not true. Our kids are actually very good about identifying our behaviors and our emotions, and knowing when we're sad, depressed. And you're right. If we're not able to manage, it's going to be much more difficult to manage a family, manage behaviors, manage an APA program, manage a marriage, right? These are things that oftentimes are that struggle or that are damaged if we don't seek help, as soon as we feel that we're depressed.
Right.
And it's important for us in all things to model behavior that we want to see in our kids, and that if we are feeling something and need to get help, to model that behavior to our kids. Because I want to shift the conversation now to talking about depression in our children, in our teens, and in our adults, because we know that statistically they are more likely to experience depression, and that it would be easy for a parent to miss the symptoms. I know very close to home here, we have a colleague that recently, her daughter committed suicide at a very young age.
And there's been an increase in suicides among younger children.
And I know that for that mom, we're going to have her hopefully on the show to talk about, because she says, as distraught as she is over it, she wants to make sure that other parents get the message and know how to help their kids. So maybe, Vince, if we talk a little bit about understanding the difference between when our kids are upset and potentially in danger of committing suicide. How do we recognize that?
Well, and that's a great question, because oftentimes the symptoms of depression for a young a young child, a young teen, are different than those of full mature adults. Right? So when you're looking at teens, or you're looking at your young adolescents, and you feel that something emotionally may be wrong, maybe they're being picked on at school, maybe they're struggling with their academics, when you think of depression, you think they're going to be sad, they're going to be cry a lot, they're going to isolate, they're going to be by themselves. However, if you have kids that are acting out, that are aggressive, that are hanging out with the wrong crowd, getting social appraisal and approval from crowds that might be unhealthy, they're experimenting in drugs and alcohol. These are also signs of depression in young teens. So when we see this, sometimes I think families just write that off as, this is just a phase they're going through as a teenager, or this is a developmental stage. If it's out of their typical norm, right, out of their personality norm, these are signs that there could be depression, and that we would want to address that right away.
And how would we address it, Vince? Is it a quick phone call to get them in to talk to somebody, and where do we find that person? I just feel like that's a ginormous hurdle.
Yeah.
of saying, okay, in this moment this is scaring me, so I'm going to get a professional. And where do you even find them? And that feels like it would be something that would take days, weeks, and months, and that it might be something that you need to hurry.
That is true. It could take time, and a lot of that could come from actually, like you were saying, finding a good fit for your child, and also the resistance you're going to experience from the teen, right? Very rarely is a teen right off the bat going to say, okay, let's go to counseling, let's make it better.
Right.
Because oftentimes they're in denial, they're still very angry, they still don't understand what is going on either, because it could be something about their past, it could be grieving, it could be that they're being picked on at school, whatever it may be. So you're right. So I think that as a parent, we need to first start talking with our kids more, being more involved in what they're doing, being more involved in their daily activities, being more involved in their friendships, keeping them involved in things that are positive, like either it be school activities, after school activities, academics, athletics, arts, those types of things, to make sure that their peer groups are peer groups that we want them to be with. And again, slowly integrating, don't just all of a sudden now be a hovering parent and is now involved in everything when we never were before, but slowly integrate in and be more involved with your child. Talk to them more. Don't always ask them about their emotions, just to some extent, and this is going to sound a little funny, but get to know them again. Get to know them on where they are right now, right? Johnny of 10 is no longer Johnny of 15. Johnny that's 15 is a much different person. He's experiencing things that he's never experienced before. And we want to be able to get to know that Johnny. And when we do that, we establish a new relationship where that can open up communication. And then maybe we're able to kind of, turn the tables then. But if not, and we still think professional counseling would be helpful, at least now we have a good working relationship and a trusting relationship where we can then go to the next level, and there'll be a lot less, teenage resistance.
Okay. All of that is so helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like the subject is, it's a little overwhelming for me, isn't it for
yeah.
you?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I hate to do, when we do shows where we talk about how to estate plan for when we're not here, and I
Right.
find myself like, being like, I
Head
don't
in
want
the
to think about
sand.
that, I don't want
Yeah.
to. It's the same thing, like I get a little paralyzed.
Yeah, you get
thinking about, I would rather do anything in my life than have my child be depressed and take his own life. Like anything. I'd rather
Right.
do anything
Right.
in the world. And yet I don't feel empowered as a parent to, because if you haven't been there and you don't know,
Right.
I'm sure that, parents who've been through this have a wealth of knowledge to say to us, I wished I'd done this, I wished I'd done that. And Vince, I appreciate all this because what you just said about noticing a change in behavior,
Yeah.
that I was like, oh, okay, well that's something I can latch on to. That's something that I can keep an eye out for. Are there other things that are like that are sort of hallmarks? It's not a one size fits all, right?
It's not, but you're right. I mean, and that's why we say a shift in behavior from their typical norm, right? So as we have kids that are way energetic and they're off the walls and they're playing sports and they're doing this and they're doing that. A dramatic shift in their behavior might be more isolation, more slowing down, more inclusive. But then we have other kids that maybe are a little bit more passive, a little bit more, behind the scenes, and all of a sudden now they're aggressive and acting out and want to be at the center of attention and are spending more time with groups that might not be healthy. Any dramatic shift in behavior, whatever that may be for your child, that is a hallmark cue, right? That's a cue that we want to look into, or a clue that we want to look into to see what's going on. It's not always a negative, like crying and isolating. It could be it could be anger. It could be a resistance to going to school now. It could be only wanting to play with one certain friend for a child who used to be very charismatic and play with multiple friends, right? So any dramatic shift would be something to cue us in that something's not right. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean depression, but something's going on and we need to dig in and see what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm thinking even, when we get to a certain age and kids are becoming interested in, romantic relationships potentially, that even a child acting like everything is happy but only spending time with that person is something that we need to monitor, because we see, we just saw this a couple of years ago, that there was a young girl on the autism spectrum that there'd been a behavior change, and mom thought she was happier, but she was only spending time with one friend. And what ended up happening, what they found, because then she went missing, and they discovered that friend was introducing her to somebody that she should not have been introduced to, who was taking advantage. And fortunately, eventually they located her and got her back home. But, like all the things that we don't want to have happen to our children.
Right.
So even watching when that restrictive behavior, if it's just around one person, even if they appear to be happy, could be a thing. Gosh, it is overwhelming. And then how about for our kids that it's difficult to communicate to begin with?
Right.
And to say, that they don't really understand how they're feeling anyway, so to get that baseline is hard. What about that, Vince, for the kids who aren't talkative, for whatever reason, whether they have verbal communication but they don't talk about their feelings, or they do not have vocal speech? How do we know?
And it goes back to the same thing. Look for behavior change, right?
Okay.
Are they more grumpy? Are they more aggressive? Are they more sad? Are they more withdrawn? Are they, more, and I use this word loosely, but more flirty, right? Are they, is that out of character for someone who's more shy and passive and cautious? All of a sudden becomes, like you said, it looks like they're being real happy and real flirty. That could also be a cue that something's going on. They're compensating for something. They might be overcompensating for a lack of self-esteem, or that they're feeling lower on their abilities or less confident in their abilities. So we need to look at what's going on around them. And that goes back to what we were saying earlier about then become more involved. Be more involved in their therapies. Be more involved in their treatments. Be in better communication with teachers, administrators, and supervisors, so that we can see are these behavior changes changing in different environments? Are they hanging out with different people at school? Or maybe they're being challenged more in their ABA program, and that's really hurting their self-confidence. I mean, there's lots of different things to do, but being more involved at that point is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and sometimes that means, just like when they were little, meeting them wherever they are, playing with whatever thing that they like to play. I think, Nancy's a great example of, you're such a good mom, that Wyatt loves to paint. And so often in the night, if I'm talking to you in the evening, Wyatt's painting, and you're sitting there with him while he's painting, and he's asking you questions about, what color is this, Mom?
Right,
what would you
right,
consider this color?
right.
I always just think that is like the sweetest thing in the world. And I am one of those parents where my child has gotten very adept at, he would rather for me to be away. He wants to play his video games with his friends. He doesn't want me in the room because, as he says, I wreck everything. Thank you. Because, there's some level of violence in everything. And I go, I don't like that. And so he doesn't want me there. He's like, go away. I don't need you to see this. But I need to push it a little bit. I need to make him... Nothing makes him happier than if somebody who doesn't know how to play VR plays VR with him, because he loves to show it. He loves to teach it to somebody.
Right.
And I need to, do more of that.
Virtual reality, for those that don't know what that is.
Yes, the virtual reality.
Social media. Don't forget social media, right? I mean,
Right.
Make sure you're friended. Make sure you're following your child's social media, because oftentimes you'll see trends there before you actually notice it at home.
I don't think either. Jem's not big social media.
Neither is Wyatt.
Jem texts.
Yeah.
And he knows that every once in a while I grab his phone and I go through all the texts and I comment on, what's being said and whatever. But thank goodness we have not gotten into that yet. And I'm hoping we don't get into that
But
sooner.
that's something that parents need to look into, obviously, what their child is involved in on social media, right?
Right. And I know personally, we've had friends and family members that we've caught, different things, because we've had different family members that have followed or been a part of their social media where there's been depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, and we've been able to get in contact with the parents, and the parents had no idea this was going on. And so we've been able to, help different friends and family members, find help for their child or their children, when the parents didn't know that was happening. So that support network that we all have around us, not only for our kids but for our families, is also very helpful as well.
Yeah, Jem has a Facebook account, but we have said no to the Snapchat, because that's the one that they can say something and it goes away.
Goes away, yeah.
And so you can't check it. So we've said there's no Snapchat. I need to look, and I don't think he has an Instagram, but I'm just realizing I need to look at that. We all need to stay in tune with that.
On top of that for our kids,
Yes, because if our kids I know people who have kids who are very active on Facebook. A lot of kids are in the autism spectrum are not as into Facebook, and I think that's a blessing.
I agree.
Although I do think, I wish somebody would teach a class in how to be on Facebook and how to instant message for individuals on the autism spectrum, because I know somebody can instant message me, and the way in which they do it, I'm not a person who can diagnose autism, but I can
Right.
go, that's one of my friends on the autism spectrum.
Right.
The way they instant message, and I know that they have expressed to me, I'm frustrated. I write to people and they don't write back, and I've said, well, but because you need to say this, not this. I
Right.
wish somebody would teach that class, Vince.
Well, and that can be part of an ABA program. I know for me, I've worked with several young adults over the years, especially as social media has continued to boom, to actually appropriate what's going on social media, how to converse during social media, what to look at, what not to look at, how to friend or defriend or follow or not follow. There's so many different things, but that actually is a learning skill. That's as much as we see the positives and negatives of social media, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So we can build programs, and we have, on how to appropriately use social media as for social, for social reasons and nothing more.
Well, Vince, you're amazing. Nancy, did you have a question?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That was.
You're absolutely amazing, Vince, and we just adore you. And you're such a gift to the autism community, and especially to CARD, as you're the director of family services, and help so many of us with so many different things, myself included. So we just want to thank you for being with us once a month and helping us to sort of get a handle on some of these things and give great advice.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
Thank you so
Good
much for
having
being
you
with us,
today,
Vince.
Vince.
All right, ladies. Have a
All
great
right.
rest of your week.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and then
Okay.
we're going to come back. I'm going to talk a little bit about tomorrow's show
Yeah.
and something that we're doing live on Friday.
Oh,
so stick with us. Back with more Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy after these messages.
We're
Just
talking
talk-
about Super Bowl.
Right. What do you
What
do?
do you do? Do you celebrate or not?
Well, I was saying to Nancy that's every Super Bowl I take the day and I go to Joann's Fabric and I get myself some sort of thing and I sew. That is my tradition. I went to graduate school in Denver, Colorado for 3 years, and 2 of the 3 years the Denver
Broncos went to the Super Bowl.
were in the Super Bowl, and John Elway was king
Right,
and
right.
everything, and I had many parties that I could have gone to, but I thought it was great because the entire city of Denver was shut down except for Joann's Fabric. And I would sew, so that's my tradition now. What do you do for Super
I
Bowl?
just, if there's a party nearby, I might go, but I'm not into the big parties.
I can't even.
Yeah.
I don't have enough words to say at a Super Bowl party to warrant my flesh being
Right,
there,
right,
right?
nor do I.
And it's painful to me to watch, and it's just so boring.
Yeah, I agree.
So I just don't participate.
So we're
in
not
it.
big sports fans, so we offended you.
Sorry.
But tell us, you've got some things going on this week. You've got Friday,
Yes.
something coming
so
up.
Friday, we're announcing this today. We're going to do a live feed from the Cal ABA conference. This is the ABA California conference. And I had talked when I was up at the autism conference the other day about how much I love a good poster session. And this is when people who have done research, they submit to they put it all on a poster, they put it on a board, and they stand in front of it. And you come up, you look at the topic, you look at the graphs and things on the poster, and you say, talk to me, explain your research to me. And they're supposed to stand there and in under 2 minutes tell you what they did. And
Okay.
I love this.
So you're going to be looking at some of these poster
I'm going to be making
boards and finding ones that you think might help our audience.
I'm hoping to spark interest in someone.
Okay.
And so if there are topics that you're interested in, we're going to try to do like an hour and a half live on Friday morning with me walking around live, sticking a microphone in people's face and saying, pretend I'm just a person, because I am just a person walking up to you, but we've got a bunch of people watching. And so come to this live poster session with me, you guys. I get jazzed about it because to me, it's hope. To me, it's the future. My favorite thing is knowing that other brighter minds are fixing things that I don't know how to fix.
Right.
That I had such trouble sleeping when we were in our autism intervention because I was like, I got to do something. We were just talking about depression, and for me, the only thing that helps with depression is taking action. It's the only way that I got to get up and I got to do something. I got to make something happen. I got to, something. And I couldn't with autism.
Right.
Like I could to some extent, but then I couldn't do more.
Right. You didn't have the control over
I
it.
didn't have control, and I didn't have the knowledge, and I didn't have, it was like, unless I dropped everything and went to graduate school, which I couldn't do.
Right.
Which is part of why we started this show, is that I wanted parents to be able to get up at 2:00 in the morning and find information for free that they could pause and go, and now there's so much. But when I know that brighter minds, like while I'm off having lunch, somebody is sitting someplace trying to figure out how to get a person on the autism spectrum to be able to communicate. That makes me happy, because I go, oh, you're working on it, I can have lunch.
Right.
Oh, you're working on it, I can sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, you're working on it, I can take a breath. Oh, you're working on it, I can take a shower.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Right.
there was a time when I was like, I don't have time to take a shower. I got to come up with an autism intervention.
Right.
So I love it. To me, it's like touring the future.
Yeah.
and
Very
seeing
good.
these
So we'll have to
freshmen.
encourage everybody to tune in. And what have you got on the show tomorrow?
So tomorrow on the show, this is really exciting. Of course, we have Bonnie Yates answering your legal questions, but we have Thomas Scheel, who, this is really cool. He has started a dating and social media site for adults with autism, and it's called Unipie.
Unipie?
Unipie.
Unipie.
Uneepi. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Unipie. So we're going to talk about that, because so many people for so long have said, but what about the dating piece?
Right.
Like, it's lovely, you've covered when people are in love, but how did you get there? What's the dating piece? Travis Breeding, I hope you're going to be tuning in tomorrow, because I know you've asked me this question a million times. So this is a very exciting thing. Unipie, plus which we've got an amazing speech and language pathologist who happens to also be a BCBA. So, and she's got really important resources for us about how we work with nonverbal kids. You know, I did the autism monologues this summer, and there's a joke in it where somebody in an IEP says to a mom, and it's a terrible joke, but it's based on reality, says, well, the speech and language pathologist wanted to come to the IEP, but your child's nonverbal, so she can't do anything, so she didn't come. And people have been told that before. Well, your child's nonverbal, so the speech and language pathologist isn't going to be able to help you. This is a good speech and language pathologist who's also a BCBA, who's like, bring me your nonverbal child, because there's a wealth of things that we absolutely need to do to teach functional communication, but also to give the best possible chance for speech. So that's fabulous, and plus we'll do the mindfulness moment. So we're out of time, but so thrilled. People have got, one more day to write in and do grants.
Yes,
for,
one more day.
Autism Care Today.
Yes.
You can go to act-today.org. Wonderful.
Go to our grants
I
page.
appreciate you being here with me.
I appreciate being here with you.
For all of you, make sure that you're with us tomorrow. Until then, give yourselves a hug from us.
Yes, give yourselves and your kiddos.
I said it all wrong. It's like
It
I've never
doesn't
done
matter.
before.
Everybody
and your
group
kids
hug.
too.
Okay.
Group hug. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.